Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all doing well. This is where I talk about the books that I'm reading. I like to read diverse books and I highlight a lot of Canadian literature. If you are new, thank you so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today you've probably guessed by the title of the video that I am going to talk about CanLit today, or Canadian literature. And I'm putting forward the question, is CanLit in trouble? I will explain why I think that might even be a question to ask. And the answer might actually be yes, if we look at these labels of CanLit as a dumpster fire. There has been scandals of CanLit authors, and there's been a lot of issues. There's been issues with accountability. There's been issues with funding and publishing. And some of the most recent news has been about banning books. So despite all of this, I still actually think that CanLit is well, it is alive, it is thriving. I do have a whole YouTube channel that talks about Canadian literature a lot. I read a lot of Canadian literature. So for today's video, I'm going to take a closer look at these topics, and I'll let you share your thoughts, and please tell me what you think. And then perhaps in the not too far distant future, I will do a response video later to share why I don't think CanLit is in trouble. Okay, let's get into this. So first, let's take a look at this label of CanLit as a dumpster fire. In 2017, author Allicia Elliott, who I think is fantastic, wrote an article titled "CanLit is a Raging Dumpster Fire." It sounds so harsh. So I'm going to link the article below. You can check it out in the description box. So this was a label that had been used in the past, and it still shows up from time to time. So in the article, Allicia Elliott gave examples of appropriation and writers who were telling stories that weren't theirs to tell. And she links a lot of what is happening. I thought this was very, very interesting. She links a lot of what is happening within CanLit to be a microcosm of what is happening within Canada and with Canada's national identity. It makes sense. Now, this article is 8 years old, 2017, and my hope is that there has been some learning and growth since then. And I think Allicia Elliott alludes to that, but that doesn't mean that everything is perfect now, right? Far from it. So Allicia Elliott gives good advice on how to keep CanLit alive and make it better. And she concludes the article in this way. I really liked this. So she says, we can't just stand around and complain about the dumpster fire in front of us. She says we can't do this forever. Eventually we have to grab some, and she says effing fire extinguishers and put that fire out. So in other words, she's saying this is up to us to do what we need to do. And she says we have to sit down, assess the criticism, and do the work to fix the problems. Makes sense, right? She says that we can make change ourselves now, right? This isn't a lost cause. And she says, in fact, we are. She says so many amazing people are stepping forward and speaking out. She says, or quietly writing revolutions, which I also like, right? Using the medium that they have. So I think that this is really good. She says to write the books that you've always wanted to read, to encourage others to write the books that you've always wanted to read. I think that this is fantastic. It's really good advice. And she says to celebrate those books and to mentor young writers and just become, the support that you wish you'd had, is how she puts it. She says, put your ego aside. Listen to the constructive criticism you need to hear. learn from that criticism. That's a key point. And give both CanLit and Canada no choice but to become better. I loved that. So another topic that Allicia Elliott touches upon in her article are scandals. And she talks specifically about the Stephen Galloway scandal. But of course, there are others like Joseph Boyden, Gwen Benaway, and more. I'm not going to name all these people, but I'm not here to go into like the nitty gritty of, you know, these scandals and what that's all about. But I want to acknowledge them and to know like that they are part of CanLit history, for better or for worse. So some scandals are sexual assault related. Some, as I said earlier, are appropriation and authors misrepresenting who they are, their identities. So in a 2020 article called Setting the CanLit Canon on Fire, this is by Erika Thorkelson. Again, I will link this article below so you can go and check that out. So Erika talks about the launch of an anthology called Refuse, CanLit in Ruins. So the launch happened in 2018, and the author points out that it marked a moment of turmoil in our national literature. And it was a period of controversies and inequities within CanLit. So some of the same stuff that Allicia Elliott was talking about. And this period of so-called dumpster fire inspired this anthology and no longer set aside those difficult conversations that probably weren't happening. And one of the pieces in the anthology differentiates between two meanings of CanLit, and this is true, that we use CanLit to mean a lot of things. So one refers to the industry of Canadian writing and Canadian publishing, and then the other describes the field of study. This is according to that article. So we have to look at who is being published and who is being studied. You know, who are we including? But more importantly, maybe who are we excluding? So I thought that that was really interesting. And this means taking a closer look at funding and publishing as well. So in 2022, Ken Norris wrote an article called If We Had a CanLit That Worked. And I will link it below as well. I thought that this was fantastic. In this article, Ken Norris gives 9 points, which basically point out the dysfunctional, the dysfunction of CanLit, but also what it would look like if it was more functional. So all 9 points I thought are very valid and still happening, and I think that they're accurate. So I will only share a few points here to just give you an idea. But yeah, check out the article if you want to read more. So he talks about if we had a CanLit that worked, Canadian books would sell. Why is this an issue? So in the article, he says that 343 is the average number of copies a CanLit title sells in its first season of publication. That's only a couple of years ago, right? This article is, 3 years old? So 343, not 343,000, not even 3,000, right? So most of the books that are bought in Canada are neither Canadian authored nor Canadian published. This is another issue. We are a wonderful market, the article says, for books published in the US and the United States, the UK, and in France. So Canada continues to take a back seat there. And more often than not, Canadian rights are folded into North American rights. And Canadian publishers don't have the opportunity to buy Canadian rights. And this is still an ongoing issue. A second point that he makes is, if we had a CanLit that worked, more Canadian writers would be able to make a decent living from writing. So I'm making that clarification, from writing only. Again, still a huge problem. It is hard to make a living as a writer in Canada. Some do. They say about maybe 10% in the article. We see a lot of writers move to other countries to make a go of it. And Ken Norris says that when he was a full-time writer, he spent 60% of his time looking for money, or working for money, or writing for money. So that's a problem. A third point that goes along kind of with these first two is that Canadian publishers would be less reliant upon Arts Council subsidies. This is huge in Canada. And Ken Norris points out that when the top priority becomes getting grants, then it really changes how business is done. And then, of course, the last one that I'm going to share, at least, is if we had a CanLit that worked, Canadian literature, like American literature from the US, would have international standing. So there are a number of Canadian writers who are only famous in Canada. I would say the majority. This again, it continues to be a problem. When I do the Reading Across Canada challenge and the Reading Across Canada book club, I have to keep in mind that many CanLit books aren't available in other countries. And sometimes they aren't even available within Canada. Like they're difficult to get in certain parts of Canada. There are, of course, some Canadian authors who have international standing. There's, Margaret Atwood, of course. I think everybody knows who Margaret Atwood is. Jan Martel. But this is very rare. And I know when I first started my channel, when I started talking about CanLit and Canadian literature, and this is what I was going to kind of focus on in my channel, it was not uncommon for me to receive comments like, I didn't know Canada had literature. And it's so sad because the writing talent in Canada is excellent, but not enough people know about it. So yes, there are issues with publishing, accessibility, funding, all of those things. In 2024, an article by Rolph Maurer, it's called The CanLit Implosion. This article said that the CanLit dumpster fire, gotta think about it, is back. And he talks about the numbers falling in Canadian publishing. And he says in the article that the Canadian book trade is flying blind. They basically don't know what they're doing. And he calls for a renewed national commission into the arts, culture, and media of Canada. So saying that what we have now is unsustainable and failing, right? So he would say that CanLit is in trouble. So lots of doom and gloom has been going on for a while, it seems, according to these articles at least. And is it still continuing, right? And and I'm not done. So another hot topic that might make one think that CanLit is in trouble. It has to do with accountability. And I haven't talked about this a whole lot on my channel, but in this case, it's with the Giller Prize. And the Giller Prize has been considered to be the most prestigious Canadian literary award overall, but definitely for fiction. Certainly with the amount of money that was awarded to the winner, And if you follow my channel, then you know that I have followed the Giller Prize for a few years, and I'd make prediction videos and reaction videos. You may have also noticed that I did not talk about the Giller last year. I didn't follow the prize last year. And there was a reason for that, and it wasn't just because I got distracted or because I was too busy to make videos. I will leave a video below where you can hear the Globe and Mail columnist Marcia Lederman. She talks with Eli Glasner on Commotion, which is like a podcast show. And it's about the impact on CanLit if we lose the Giller Prize. And you might wonder, why would we lose the Giller Prize? So I'm going to sum this up as quickly as possible because it's so much more. But the video does talk more about this, so please go and check that out. So at the Giller ceremony in 2023, when they're about to award the prize to the winner, protesters interrupted the ceremony, and they were holding signs that said Scotiabank funds genocide. So the Giller Prize had been called at the time the Scotiabank Giller Prize, and they had sponsored the literary prize for many, many years. So after this happened, authors got involved, and several authors called for the Giller to cut ties with Scotiabank and also other funders because Scotiabank was supporting the genocide in Palestine. There's more information on the video. So this whole process was very controversial. And like I said, you can get more details by looking this up. But at first, the Giller said that they would not be stopping their partnership with Scotiabank. And myself, I was upset that they didn't really do anything about it. So after that, a whole bunch of authors started pulling their books from the prize. And the ceremony, was much smaller last year, so it still went ahead. But it's tough. And I tried to understand both sides because, I've already shared a number of issues within CanLit. And one of them being that writers don't make a living. They don't make a lot of money from their writing. If you're only selling 300 books in a season, you're not making a living. And the Giller winner used to receive $100,000. So this prize was a big deal for many reasons. The Giller Prize has, however, ended the partnership with Scotiabank. And I'm not sure about the other sponsors and what's all happened there, but now the issue is, where do they get their money? So we're back to funding. So it seems that they are taking accountability, which I applaud them for, and they're doing what they have been called to do or asked to do. But there are consequences to doing that because it's not easy getting that kind of money. And again, they talk about this more in the video. So this year, the Giller is going ahead, but the winning prize is only $25,000. Still not bad for a Canadian author, but compared to $100,000, it's a big difference. So basically, what will the future, of the prize look like, and what impact will that have on CanLit? We will have to wait and find out. I will be following the prize again this year. So stay tuned for that. But that video came out, the video of Commotion came out in July of this year, and we are now at the beginning of September, and we're not done yet. There's more fuel on the fire, I guess you could say. Maybe a week ago now, the Edmonton Public Schools announced that they will be banning 200 books and removing them from the shelves. So these are included like Canadian books from Margaret Atwood, Khalid Hosseini, Margaret Lawrence, Alice Munro, Richard Van Camp, and many others. And they aren't all Canadian books that they're removing from the shelf. There are so many, like Diana Gabaldon, Emily Henry, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Jeanette Walls, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Anne Frank, to name a few. So I will leave an article that includes the full list in the description box below, so you can go and see what the list is. But the response to this has been, I think for the most part, that people are, like myself, gobsmacked. Yes, I know there are people who agree with banning books. I am not one of those people. I mean, I can't be with, the way I talk about books. And, and I read The Scarlet Letter in a Catholic school in English class. And we all survived. We're fine. We had good conversations and we learned from what we were reading. And anyway, I can go off about this forever, but the response from some of the Canadian authors have been classic Canadian. So authors like Margaret Atwood, who, Atwood is no stranger to having her books banned. She first tweeted about this, and she warned, in it says, warning kids to not read The Handmaid's Tale because your hair will catch on fire. And then she says to get one now before they have public book burnings. So, kind of some humor there. She then posted a short story satire, and this was just a day or so ago, and it said that it was suitable for 17-year-olds in Alberta schools, unlike The Handmaid's Tale, which is what we're being told. And then in brackets, she put, "Sorry, kids. Your Minister of Education thinks you are stupid babies." And then the short story is about John and Mary, who are very, very good children. They grow up and get married and have 5 children without having any sex. And it goes on very Atwood style. And so some satire there. And then the author Anne-Marie MacDonald posted yesterday, this was on Instagram, I'm pretty sure. She posted a picture of her book, Fall on Your Knees, one of my favorite books of all time, and said, "Dear Edmonton School Board, what am I, chopped liver? Ban me already." So again, replying with humor. So it seems that CanLit might actually be in trouble. What are your thoughts with everything that is going on, over the past little while? Can this so-called dumpster fire be saved with all the scandals, with publishing issues and book banning policies? What do you think? Is CanLit in trouble? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.